put it on. Cool. Put timer on. I'm going to try and keep it to about 30 minutes. So we'll see how we get on. Might go over a little bit. But yeah, cool. You ready? You happy?
Ready, happy. Yeah.
Perfect. So welcome to episode 2 of the Skill Point podcast. I'm joined by David Ellis, an SEO guru that I've known for a couple of years now, isn't it, David? We've done a few bits together. And really for this episode, I really want to dig into SEO for the recruitment industry, and I couldn't think of anyone better to bring on and talk about this. So, David, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself, your experience, and sort of where you're coming from?
Thanks, Haydn. Yeah, I'd love to. And thanks for having me, by the way. Really appreciate that. So I've got a bit of a weird background. I actually studied music back in the day. So that's kind of where I had my start. When I wanted to find a job after studying in university and all that kind of stuff, I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do. So I think I kind of did what everyone does, and I fell into recruitment, essentially. I worked for about 6 years in recruitment, really enjoyed it. I operated mostly in the insurance space. It was kind of the executive search style of recruitment. And then I left that business to join a company called PGC, who actually are suppliers to the recruitment market. So they help businesses who are expanding to the US market and that kind of thing. And so I did 3 years working with PGC, again, working in the recruitment market, got to meet loads of great recruiters and great companies and great entrepreneurs and business people. My role there was, I was technically, my job title was Director of Business Development, which kind of says like pretty much nothing. How I describe that role now is like a growth lead. So I was running our marketing and running our sales, had a little sales team, little marketing team. And I was there for 3 years. And then I left to set up this business, which I'm running now, called Teranga. So I'm founder and CEO, and we do SEO for companies. So we're a one service marketing agency, and we've very deliberately decided to just do one service and be masters of one, rather than trying to juggle a whole load of different services and offerings and stuff like that. And we really focus in the B2B market. So we work with a lot of consultancies, IT companies, and also a number of recruitment companies as well. And that's partly just because of my network and background in the recruitment space.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So what does Teranga mean?
It's a great question. So it comes from a West African language called Wolof.
Yeah.
And like, it's a long story, but I went on my honeymoon. I went to Senegal in West Africa, and I kept hearing this word Teranga, and basically it's a really big part of their culture, and it kind of means like generosity, welcoming, hospitality. Like it's a very hospitable culture. You'll meet people for the first time and they like invite you back to their house for dinner, that kind of thing. So I loved the concept of the word, and I also, as soon as I heard it, I was like, that will brand really well one day. And so when I came to name the agency, I didn't have any great ideas. And I was like, oh, I've always thought I'd love to have a company called Teranga. So that's where it came from. I could try to loosely tie it to some SEO thing, but the reality is like there's not much there.
Well, yeah, my thoughts were like the generosity side of that. Really, really cool. Love that. Do you think that reflects in your company's values? And if so, how?
Good question. I mean, I need to be careful not to be too controversial here, but I do think that company values, for the most part, are kind of a load of nonsense a lot of the time.
Ooh, yeah.
Because, and I'm sorry to say it to everyone watching this, but I see this a lot in the recruitment space. Everyone says they're best in class. Everyone says they're ethical. Everyone says they're blah, 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 blah. But I do think generosity is really important. I think just in business, but also in life in general. I think it's a great principle. There's a good quote that's from the Bible, actually.
Yep.
Which says the world of the generous gets larger.
Yeah, nice.
Which I think is a really good point. Like the more generous you are, you tend to like your world gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And I do think that's really important in the business space. Something I'm very passionate about is finding win-win-win situations. So, you know, just because you're being generous and you're going above and beyond doesn't mean that you can't also win big, your team can't also win big, and the client can't also win big as well. So maybe there is something there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you completely. So when you say, I mean, we'll crack into SEO in a sec, but I want to circle back to the values thing, because obviously I do a lot of branding, and values is something that always comes up, the purpose, motive, or where you want to be, or what you sort of stand for as a company. Do you think that is all just fluff, or do you think companies can do it right?
Well, I think sounds like you're much more of an expert than I am, to be honest. I think what I'm commenting on is what I sometimes see, which is you'll get the leadership team get in a room, they think of a bunch of words that they like, they chuck them on a whiteboard and on their website, and then nothing happens to put it into practice.
Yeah.
So I think probably what you help businesses with is actually how to use the values and how to make that part of your brand, rather than being an abstract thing that's like outside of your business and not in your day-to-day of the company. Yeah,
and I think you touched on that quote that I absolutely hate, like, best in the world or something like that, or class of their own and all stuff like that. It's just hyperbole, isn't it? It just doesn't mean anything. And I think you're right. If you settle down, if you sit down with the internal team and maybe even outsiders, clients that you work with, and actually dig into what you actually stand for as a company, and then you can actually get some genuine ones out there that live and breathe the company. But it's not something that you just sit down in a meeting on a Friday night before you go and get beers and just say, oh yeah, we're best in class or whatever. It's something that needs to take months and months of delegation and figuring out in between the lines what you stand for as a company. Anyway, SEO, let's get into it. So we spoke before, but I'm very much in the mind that SEO is extremely difficult for the recruitment industry. I don't know if you would agree for me, but the way that I see it, I've had a bit of experience. I'm no massive expert, but the way that SEO seems to work is that you're competing for that position on the Google rankings, and the competition in the recruitment space is people like Manpower or Adecco and these gigantic businesses, or you're going up against the job boards that are just, they've got buckets and buckets and buckets of money that they're throwing probably internal SEO teams at as bringing in external agencies and just the best of the best to be able to beat that. And I think really, like, how do you get there? But I think the first question I'd like to sort of talk to you about is SEO. I think there is so much information out there, and it's always about whoever's got the best SEO to get that information top of Google. But from your perspective as a person that's, boots on the ground, doing the work every day, what does SEO look like now in 2022, but also going into 2023? Because I think it's a different beast to what it was even a few years ago.
Yeah, you're right. And the thing is, the way that the Google works and the algorithm works is it's constantly updating. And there was an update even just a few months ago, which we might talk about later on.
Yes, we will. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, which is called the useful content update. And so the goalposts moving all the time. And so that's good if you're on the pulse, because it means you can get out in front of the market. And this is something that I see in the recruitment space. I think there's actually quite a lot of opportunity there with the way that the landscape as a whole is changing, and also the way that Google is changing as a whole. I mean, we talk about things like Google for Jobs, which is still relatively new. I don't know, it's probably been around 2-3 years or something like that. It's not fully utilized in the recruitment sector. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, maybe you can come back to this clip 2-3 years from now, but I wouldn't be surprised if that takes over job boards in the next few years, because you can always rely on Google to promote their own tools and their own stuff. And previously, where job boards would have really dominated a lot of the search rankings in Google, now you see Google for Jobs at the top, and then afterwards you see all the other rankings afterwards. So the long story short is it's always changing. To come back to your question, what's SEO like in 2022? It's always changing, but there's sort of fundamental pieces to it. We like to see it in 4 different parts. We call it the 4 levers of SEO. By that we mean there's sort of 4 buckets of activity, or 4 levers you can pull that are going to get you results. And ultimately, this might sound really obvious, but the results we want to rank on page 1, we want to get more traffic, and obviously we want to generate revenue. So whether that's candidates or clients, or that's what we want. So there's 4 levers in order to do that. You've got the technical health of the website. So, a lot of this happens on the back end of the website. It's things like how quickly does it load? What are the page health scores? Are there any broken links? Are your images optimized properly? That kind of thing. So a lot of it's on the back end, not particularly exciting, but does have a big impact. You've got on-site optimization. And by that, we mean, have you got all the right pages in place? Like, have you got a good layout, a good structure? And then are those pages optimized around keywords? Third lever is content writing. So blogs, guides, articles, stuff like that. And the fourth lever is what we call link building. So just to really, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors around link building, and it's a bit of a wild west out there. But to sort of oversimplify it, basically Google makes the determination of how much authority your website has. And generally speaking, websites with a higher authority are going to rank higher in the SERPs, the search engine results page. And the way that they determine that is they look around the whole rest of the internet and they say, how many links are pointing back to your website? And generally speaking, the more links from better places, the higher your domain authority. So you can utilize methods to build up more links, which builds up your domain authority, which helps you with the rankings. So those are always kind of the 4 elements. And then within that, things are changing quite a lot on a daily basis. But I think that just helps to really simplify what can often sound like a quite mystical and like abstract thing. It's always going to be in one of those 4 areas.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you on that. It's and they all need attention, don't they? You can't just focus on one of them. So if a recruitment agency wanted to attempt SEO and they wanted to improve it, is it better for them to try and do it themselves, or do you think bringing in a specialist agency is the way to go?
Well, obviously I run an agency, so I'm a little bit...
It's a bit of a loaded question, isn't it?
But as a business owner myself, I mean, there are certain things that we want to do in-house, and there are certain things that we want to outsource. And there's been a number of things that are highly specialized that we've decided to outsource. And then there are things that are a little bit more generic and we've been able to wrap our heads around that we want to do in-house. So, I mean, it depends on your budget. It depends on your capacity for learning and stuff. I think the real benefit of outsourcing is just that speed. Because if you're going to try and figure it out on your own, is it going to take twice the amount of time? It's going to take 3 times the amount of time. And in SEO, that might mean it takes 3 years to see results rather than 6 months. So I think there's some advantages to outsourcing it. And I guess this isn't directly answering your question, but I do think it's worth taking a bit of time to talk about who should actually be doing SEO. And who shouldn't be bothering at this point. So for me, like if you need revenue leads today and you need that really quick flip over in revenue to go from, the spend that you're putting into a marketing channel to getting revenue back, it's not the quickest. So you can look at, you're the expert in recruitment marketing, but you can look at whether it's outreach or advertising or any of the other methods that you guys talk about. But if you're able to think long term, you have that product market fit, you have that market message that's resonating well, that's where SEO is a really good channel, because in 6 months or 12 months or 18 months, you'll be in a really, really good position. And the hardest bit is building up that momentum. But once you have the momentum, it compounds. So it gets better and better and better with time. Quite similar to pretty much any sort of content marketing inbound type of a channel, which I know you guys are big fans of.
Yeah, I think that is an issue that plagues a lot of agencies, is that short-termism, thinking, how can I get immediate results? Whereas actually, you can do something like that, but you definitely need something like SEO as a back burner. Uh, and I was wondering, I had a little laugh to myself a minute ago because I was wondering how long it would for you to say SEO's favorite motto, it depends. Because every SEO says that. It didn't take too long. I think we're like 10 minutes in.
It does.
Yeah, it all depends, doesn't it? Depends. So from your opinion, do you think SEO does have a place in the recruitment industry? I know that you mentioned Google for Jobs. I actually think that, because being in this industry, I think that's been around since, I started recruitment like 6 years ago or something. It's always been something that they've played with. Right. And do you think they're really starting to, are you seeing a bit more of a push in that? And then also on that, Google for Jobs, you still get the job boards in Google for Jobs, don't you? So it's, how do you compete with that? And another question is like, if you've got your jobs on a job board, but you've also got them on your website, are they going to compete with each other?
All really good questions. Where do I start?
Unpack that.
What do you want to start with? Just Google for Jobs in general?
Yeah, let's talk about Google for Jobs, what you're seeing. Because I know you work in recruitment agencies, and maybe explain it a little bit more as well, because I'm sure it's very mystical. For me, I've played with it a little bit, but from my understanding, it's optimizing the schema, but I'm sure there's probably a lot more now, isn't there?
That's a big part of it. That is a big part of it. So just to bring people up to speed, so schema is essentially it's code that you put on the sort of back end of the website, for want of a better word, for a better term, which makes it easier for Google to crawl the page, and then it can pull the results into the Google for Jobs section. So the way to think about it is Google for Jobs is just like a mini version of the Google global search. So how Google works is, just really basic terms, is they have crawlers that crawl the whole internet all the time, pulling back all loads and loads of data. And then the algorithm collates it and organizes it in a way that you want it to be organized. That's kind of it in a, the long story short. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated than that, but that's in basic terms. The Google for Jobs is just the jobs version of that. So it's scouring the whole internet looking for jobs, including job boards, including websites, including et cetera, et cetera. And so the way to win at Google for Jobs is basically to make sure that the jobs on your website are optimized properly. So they have the right structure, they have the schema markup that we talked about. There's various aspects to it. It's actually not as complicated as people think, but we've, of all of the recruiters that we've worked with, none of them have been doing this already. So it's a huge opportunity, and it's very low hanging fruit.
Absolutely.
And
perfect.
To come back to your point about the job boards,
yes,
Google is going to, over time, this is a prediction, will favor the results directly from recruiters' websites rather than the job boards, is my prediction.
Do you think Google has that kind of way of doing things, giving the little person a chance rather than the big guys swallowing up everything?
I think it's probably because in the future they'll be charging.
Yeah. Do you think so? Do you think there'll be, because there is no way paid ads Google functionality yet, is there?
I don't think that's actually a really good question. I don't know for 100% certainty, but there will be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cool. Fantastic. So let's move on to the latest Google update that you mentioned. It's changing the market, I think. I'm, very not super au fait with it. I've done a little bit of research, but I'm sure you're implementing all this across all your client sites and maybe seen drop in rankings or had to change things. So do you want to talk us through it and what it means, and give the whole sort of breakdown of what it means now?
Yeah, absolutely. So Google does algorithm updates all the time. And then occasionally they'll make a big announcement about a big one. So that's what this was. It was called something like the useful content update, something like that. And I won't go into all of the details, but broadly speaking, over time, Google has become, the algorithms and the crawlers have become better and better at finding content that's really valuable. So actual useful, interesting, valuable content. So historically, you could just throw up a blog post chuck as many keywords as you can in there, shove them in, and you can guarantee that that would rank. You sort of trick Google into ranking. Now, over time, it's getting harder and harder and harder to do that. And what Google is now optimizing for, which is or is trying to optimize for, is the actual value. So again, I think it's really important to take a step back and just think about these things in kind of first principles, which is, what does Google want? Google wants really high value content for the customer, because all they care about is their customer experience, customer being the person who's searching in Google. So they don't want a bunch of spammy pieces of content that aren't actually useful. They want stuff that people read and love, and actually brings them a lot of value. So in terms of our workflow and how we work, it actually hasn't changed that at all, because we've always written, like, content writing is a huge part of what we do as an agency, specifically for SEO. And we've always written it to be as value and based and interesting as possible, and well written and kind of research backed. So we spend a lot of time researching the pieces that we write and going into a lot of detail in each piece, because we knew that long term that's always going to win. Value-based stuff is always going to win long term. So it actually hasn't changed much how we kind of go about writing content. But I do know of a lot of people who had previously gone for more of a sort of volume-based approach, just churning out as much, as many blogs as possible, chucking as many keywords in there as possible, but not there being no real substance behind it.
And do you think this is to fight AI written blogs as well, that have just exploded out of nowhere, haven't they?
Could be partly. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Could definitely be partly that as well. I definitely know there's been a lot of people that have been hit by the update. It's seen a drop in rankings.
So another question I've got for you is, how does Google perceive value?
Good question. Well, there's going to be, I'm getting out of territory that I understand well at this point. But this is how I would think about it, which is, there's, hundreds, if not thousands, of ranking factors. And so the perception of value is going to be on the basis of how many people are linking back to this article. When people go through to the article, how long do they stay on it? How often is it shared? How often is it cited or quoted elsewhere? I would guess it's factors like that, but it's quite difficult to tell. They do keep pretty much everything under wraps in terms of like how they actually do what they do. But that sort of stuff would be my guess.
Yeah, fantastic. Perfect. I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? And I like how you've stuck to your guns and not thought, let's find shortcuts. Let's actually stick to the way that Google always intended for us to do SEO in the first place. And actually, I think the crux of SEO sometimes just goes down to like, what gives the most benefit to someone visiting that website, and then the sort of the benefits come. Let's stop trying to game the system, and let's actually just do things right and make a better experience for anyone that comes on the website.
I completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's there's sort of two aspects to it: making sure that people have a great experience, and then the other part, which is often a lot of what we're helping companies do, is structuring the website in a way that's very easy for Google to understand what you do, who it's for, etc. So like there's sort of two sides to that. One, you want your customers to hit your website and know what problem you're solving and who the website is targeted at. But secondly, Google needs to know that as well. And if Google can't figure out what your website is about and who it's for, and you haven't structured it in a way that makes it easy for the crawlers to understand, then it's not going to go through the bother of ranking it and putting it in front of people.
Yeah, perfect. If someone came to you, if someone's in the thought process of recruitment marketer or director and thinking, I need SEO, there's something I've always been thinking about, what questions should they be asking themselves, or what things should they be having meetings around to sort of get the ball rolling, get things in place?
Well, I mean, speak with some experts, like get some opinions. Ideally, people who can give you kind of a frank perspective on whether whether like what the upside opportunity is. Because you can do research around what your competitors are doing, what sort of keywords you'd like to target, that sort of thing. I always say to people, like, if you're not prepared to commit at least 6 to 12 months to SEO, then there's not a whole lot of point in really starting, to be honest with you. If you do it for a year, you'll be very happy. Your future self will thank your past self that you started, because everyone always says to us, like, I wish we'd have started this sooner. But it just depends on the stage of where you're at in your business, and whether you have the appetite for that sort of long-term growth. And we talk about it, it's an asset. If you build up SEO momentum for your website, then that's an asset for you long into the future. Even if you stop doing any sort of additional proactive work, it's going to continue to generate you revenue and leads and candidates long into the future, even if you stopped kind of dead. So that's the way that we like to try and help people think about it.
Yeah, fantastic. So, I think we covered SEO. I think you've convinced me. I think there is a place for it, which is great. I always thought there was a place for it, but I think if we can beat the large companies and these smaller agencies have a chance to succeed. One last question is, do you think these smaller agencies, are there opportunities for them to come in and find potentially search terms or opportunities that may not be covered by the big companies? And what do you think those would be from your, because I know that is a big part of SEO, isn't it? Finding the smaller terms, maybe the ones that don't have as much traffic, but you can rank with them very quickly.
Yeah, it's exactly that, spot on, mate. So and we work on, this is not just a recruitment specific thing. This is the same in all industries. We work with some IT service providers, for example. Obviously, that's a very competitive market. There's some huge players. And so it just comes down to being strategic with the keywords that you choose to target. Are you going to be able to rank on page 1 for tech recruitment company? Probably not. But you'll almost definitely be able to rank on page 1 for, if you have a specific software that you recruit for, Salesforce or whatever, or in a location, like a specific location, or just things that will, the more niche you can be, the more likely you are to be able to rank. And obviously a big part of our job is to find keywords that strategically make sense for you to try and rank for as well. But broadly speaking, you want to make sure that people are actually searching for it. So there's got to be some search volume there. It can't be too competitive, and we can analyze how competitive a keyword is. And then obviously it's got to be relevant as well, because no sense in picking a keyword, getting people coming to your website if it's not relevant to you. But there's definitely the challenge with SEO is, like, the nature of it is it's quite winner takes all. So if you're not on page 1, you're not going to get much traffic from that. So it's about being strategic and looking for that low-hanging fruit and opportunities. And then over time, once you build up more momentum, you have a higher domain authority. That's when you can start going for those sort of bigger wins, the tech recruitment company or whatever the term is.
Yeah, fantastic. And I love, whatever discipline in marketing it is, I love how it's all interconnected in some way. So you saying to niche down is something that a lot of consultants and marketing professionals will teach anyway, for just finding and doing business development, that you need to niche your recruitment offering a little bit further into specialists like Workday or something like that, or whatever. So it's nice to see that if you also had the SEO with there as well, you're going to win that way. And then you can do more custom things like podcasts or marketing activities, events, stuff like that. And the more that you niche, the more you can create a close community of people that just get you. And then the more that the clients that you work with will think, actually, he's an expert in that exact role that I need it for. And then you can just build a talent pool that way. So perfect. Love it. I love it. I love how it's all interconnected. It's great, isn't it? The more you look into it, the more it's all just dots everywhere, and you just bring it all together.
Yeah, completely agree.
One thing I really want to talk to you about is your agency is completely remote.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with the way that, post-pandemic, and there's a lot of push for flexibility and more of a remote workforce. You do have the other side that want everyone in the office. Personally, I think that's completely wrong. But for the companies that are wanting to try it out and wanting to create a more unique and sort of hybrid team, how do you make it work?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, any issue that you see like in society in general, especially on social media, you've got your people that are really hard one way, like everyone has to be in the office. And then you've got your really hard the other way, which is that if anyone's not working remotely, then they're evil and like they don't care about their staff. And as with anything, the truth is somewhere in the middle. There's pros and cons to being fully remote. Obviously for us, we don't have overheads that we don't have to pay for offices or that sort of thing. And we get to tap into great talent all over the world. So, I mean, we have a team of about 9 people at the moment. 6 are full-time, and then we have a couple of freelancers that we work with on a project-by-project basis. We're now in 5 or 6 different time zones.
Wow.
So that's, again, that you can see that as a strength or a weakness. It means we can obviously be working almost 24/7, but it's harder to arrange a team stand-up, for example, like an all hands, because you've got to coordinate with one of our team who's in South America, and then we have someone else who's in Asia. So it's trying to coordinate those 2 ends of the spectrum of the time zone. So yeah, there are pros and cons to it. I'm a big fan in general. And then what was the second question? Was like, how do we make it work?
Yeah, how do you make it work? I mean, you're bringing up some pushback. Like, is there like it just sounds like potentially there's like a 2-hour slot that everyone can sort of get together in the time zones where the stars align and you could all talk. How do you get around that, for example? Is it a lot of instant messaging? Is it, projects, things like that?
Yeah. So we are, to be fair, most of the team are in Europe, which helps. So we're mostly like a few hours apart. And then there's people at kind of either ends of the spectrum. So I mean, I'm quite a big fan of asynchronous work, meaning, you can communicate and work at different times, rather than being in the same building or in the same room working together. And obviously with all the technology that we have nowadays, I mean, we use Slack. So you've got the chat, you've got voice notes, you've got, Loom videos and stuff like that. So you can share a lot of information without having to be in the same room with someone, which can help. We're very organized about sort of project management and stuff like that. Again, you have to be like this in an agency. We work with about 25 clients at a time. And so, that's a lot of projects on the go at one time. So we have to be super organized about how we manage that. We're actually just in the process. It's quite a painful process. We're just moving from one project management tool to another project management tool. Long story, but that's incredibly important to us to have a good workflow and a good methodology. And then I think it's partly just about having the right people in your team. I mean, we don't tell people when they should work. We don't tell people where they should work from. We barely tell them how they should work. Like, we give them all the tools and stuff that they need. But I think if you're hiring great people and then you're just empowering them and supporting them and giving everything they need, then that's worked really well for us. And people have always over-delivered, like over and above what we kind of expect.
Yeah, I think we're one of those, us as a company, we're one of those centered ones. Like, you can come into the office, you've got a space if you don't like working at home, but you can work at home as well. And I think the fundamental thing of it is it's just trust. I trust you to do your work, and then you trust me to treat you well and be able to give you the autonomy to work whenever makes you feel like you're the most productive. And then they can slot in whenever they need to, and they need to go to doctors or go and vets or whatever, they can just shoot off and go and do that, or just spend a bit more time with their family, because there's going to be different times in the day when you're more productive at some particular point. So I think at the end of the day, it's even from recruitment to agencies like us, it's all output focused. So if someone's got all that autonomy and the work's not getting done, then the conversation happens, doesn't it? Like, why isn't the work getting done? What can we do to make it better? And I think it's just the trust, I think. And it's a shame that a lot of companies don't trust their employees. There's obviously something fundamentally broken, either from the management or the people in the team to not make that happen. I know we're kind of getting a bit close on time now. I would just like to, I was really impressed when we worked with you and you spoke about it as well, your project management. How do you, and with a completely remote company, that's something that you've got to be really shit hot with to be able to make that work. From your, just some quick tips to keep your business productive, keep everything on. So I'm sure you probably have many meetings about it all the time. What would you say is the fundamental pillars to keeping a productive business going?
Good question. I mean, there's quite a few ways to answer that, isn't there? I think you've already touched on a number of them, which is having, good communication, good workflows, good project management, good tools and softwares and stuff like that. But I think, again, to sort of step back, sort of first principles kind of thinking, I mean, I think for me, one really key productivity principle is keeping the main thing the main thing. And there's a great book about this called The One Thing. You almost don't have to read the book. Like, once you know the title, it kind of, that's the whole book really. But the point of it is there should be one thing in your business that if you can complete that, it makes everything else easier or unnecessary. And so I think where people get really unproductive is when they try and do lots of different things at the same time. And so for me, I mean, I personally love, I get up really early. Typically, I'm very focused and productive in the first few hours of the day when I'm not getting distracted. So I think that's my time to like work on my one thing. And then I kind of have this sense of, right, I've done a few hours work on that. The whole rest of the day is probably going to be meetings and team check-ins and check-ins with clients and sales staff, etc. But so long as I've done that, like that big thing, which is moving the company forward, then I feel much more happy for the rest of the day. So that's kind of how my mind works. I think that deep work principle, distraction-free work is really important. My belief is that it's really rare in the workplace today for people to be able to just sit and focus on one thing without getting distracted. And I think if you can cultivate that as a skill set in you as a person, but also in the people in your team, I think it's kind of a superpower, like to be able to just ignore all distractions, turn everything else off, and just do that really important thing that needs to get done. So not saying anything new, but I think that's a big thing that helps me a lot.
It's hard though, isn't it? I know you're saying you're not saying anything new, but I think some people just need to be reminded that those deep work, that sessions, like, there's a really good book, isn't there, called Deep Work that I live and breathe by. It is set in the non-negotiable blocks of time where you will get the most important thing, eating the frog or whatever, get it done, because that's going to make the rest of the day easier and you can focus on the meetings and things like that. Fantastic. Quick one, answer this one as quick as possible because I'm just really interested in what you want to say, and it was a question we put down. What do you think the future of the recruitment industry is going to look like?
That's a tough one. I mean, I'm not.
Your SEO spin on it.
My SEO spin, yeah. Well, it's going to all be about Google for Jobs, and that's the only thing that. No, I don't know actually. I don't know. I was really close to the recruitment industry for like 9-10 years. And then I haven't been for the last year or so. I mean, what do you think is the future of the recruitment industry?
Oh, turning around on me. Yeah, it's a good one. I don't think it's really going anywhere. I think people are always going to be needed, aren't they? I think there is always going to need to be that middleman, because there are, really switched on people that just turn off to things, or they're in their job just getting on with the work. So being able to have someone to be able to pull the talent around and make industries a better place, I think. I don't know, there's probably plays with AI blockchain. I think maybe removing CVs and having your past experience on the blockchain, I think. And I think there are some cool companies starting to experiment with that. But yeah, it's an interesting place, isn't it? I think, and I think it's not going anywhere. I think
it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, do you think that the CV is still that relevant today? I mean, when we hire, I never ask for anyone's CV.
Yeah, and do you know what? I was at an event yesterday that basically said bin off the CV, because it's there's a bunch of things to it, but mostly it's the CV. You can just it's too much of a uninclusive way to hire someone, and you can just judge someone immediately from something that might not be fully indicative of who they are. And that they were saying that it's a really difficult thing for anyone to do. It's writing a CV. It's counterintuitive to who you are as a person. You don't want to boast too much, or you don't want to be too humble, and it's trying to find that. And it just doesn't seem like a good way. This company that were talking there, they did a really good way of, it was kind of like a 2-pager, and it was more about the person, and there were no dates on there, and projects that they assisted in and their expertise. And that just makes it a lot better. And it takes away that, it makes it a little bit more inclusive to people that sort of applying for the roles. So yeah, I know, I don't think, but then on the flip side, it's very much embedded in the public services sector. It's very much just part of the zeitgeist, isn't it? So trying to disrupt that is a difficult thing.
Yeah.
I think we'll finish off with a few quick fire questions.
Yeah.
What's your favorite brand of cereal?
Curiously Cinnamon.
Oh, what a shout. That is a really good brand of cereal. Yeah, that is a good
I don't
one.
buy it because I would just I could eat that by
the whole box. Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of touched on this, but what is your best productivity method? How do you stay productive?
Yeah, one thing, and the deep work.
Yeah, deep work, fantastic. Your favorite movie?
I'm quite sad. I don't watch a lot of movies. I'm not a very cool person. That one of my favorites is called Lucky Number 11.
Oh yeah, that is a good one. Yeah,
you've seen that? Yeah. I like movies like that. They have a lot of plot twists. You don't quite know what's happening.
Yeah,
that they kind of get you thinking. That's my vibe.
Great. What company do you think does branding/marketing the best?
That's a good one. I did see this question before. Sorry to break the illusion to anyone who's watching this. I saw this question before, and there's obviously a bunch of obvious companies that you could answer with, but one that I've seen recently that I really like is they're called, oh no, I forgot what they're called. Butternut Box.
Right.
So it's dog food. So we have it for our dog, and they deliver a box of food. Basically, you put it in the freezer, then you take it out, and he absolutely loves it. But just everything about the way they do their branding and marketing is just excellent. Everything from the box itself, the cardboard box has a load of great little sort of jokes about dogs and funny little things on it. The little packets are all really well designed. They've all got really interesting names. Even the way, there was a thing the other day where their freezer had broken or something, and they sent out this mass email saying really sorry that your food's not going to arrive on time. But even, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, the way that was written was just so excellent. That for me, that's branding. How do you communicate with your customers? What's your packaging look like? What's your onboarding process, etc., etc.
Yeah, so, more than logo and colors.
Totally. So I was really impressed by them actually.
Oh, fantastic! I'll check those out. I haven't heard of them. And last one, I know you're a very well-traveled man, David. So if you could live anywhere else in the world, where would it be?
Yeah, I love traveling, and there's loads of places all over the world that I would live. It depends on the context. I love Asia, so I'd love to live in maybe Singapore or probably not Hong Kong at the moment, but previously Hong Kong. Also, some parts of Europe are great. I mean, I think Italy, for example, is basically paradise.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? Yeah,
especially the Amalfi Coast kind of area. But I don't know if I'd want to live there. I'm a big fan of Lisbon as a city. So probably if I was going to pick a city to live in, it would probably be Lisbon, just on the fact that it's relatively close to home. It's, you know, cosmopolitan. There's a lot of cool stuff there. Really, compared to London anyway, a lot cheaper. But having said all of that, I should finish by saying I do think London is the best city in the world. So that is why I live here.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you, David. Really enjoyed talking to you. I think we got some really good value out of that. If anyone wants to get into touch with you, talk to you, are they able to? Would you mind that? And how best should they contact you? Or are you off limits?
No, yeah, I'd always welcome a chat. You can find me on LinkedIn, so just David Ellis Teranga, or you can just Google search Teranga Digital Marketing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Well, there we go, mate. How did that? Did you enjoy that?
Awesome. Yeah.